Sports Minutes with Ziaul Raushan.
Money FM 89.3. It's time for Sports Minutes with me, Ziaul Raushan. It's a watershed moment for local football with the new president of the Football Association of Singapore set to take office at the end of April. And regardless of who steps into the hot seat, the uncertainty of what lies ahead, one thing is for certain: the Unleash the Raw national project will be a key player in the next phase of Singapore football. It's already sparked initiatives like the Kallang Football Hub, the Singapore Youth League, and overseas scholarship programs for promising young talents. But there's one lightning rod that's garnered plenty of attention: Goal 2034. The idea that Singapore could one day qualify for the FIFA World Cup. Is it realistic? Is it even worth talking about? Or is it, as some argue, just a distraction from deeper structural issues? Well, to help us unpack this and make sense of the noise, we've got three men who need no introduction. Kadir Yahaya, a former Singapore international, one of the most respected coaching minds in the region, and more recently, the director of football at the Unleash the Raw project. Our Sasikumar, another ex-national footballer turned entrepreneur, and a man who's been unapologetically honest in holding our football ecosystem accountable. And of course, Deepanraj Ganesan, a friend of the show, a foe to some, but undoubtedly a man who has proved that the pen is most definitely mightier than the sword. Gentlemen, an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Deepan, first things first, could you set the scene for us in terms of the UTR initiative, which was launched in March 2021? 4 years on, where does it stand and what has been put in place?
Yeah, I think plenty has been put in place. I think as journalists, we've been kept busy and abreast of all the announcements and initiatives that has come since March 2021, as you mentioned. I think first and foremost was the Schools Football Academy, which was launched in 2022. I think that was a big step in the sense where they were now bringing schools into the forefront of Singapore football. And of course, subsequently, we had the UTR overseas scholarships, the JNDC, NDC, the development centers were set up. That was in 2023. And then, of course, 2024, we saw the Singapore Youth League take off. And that has been tremendous in a sense where, you know, people will say that it's not a mega idea in the sense where you have a youth league, because those were existing. But I think it brought together the whole ecosystem in a sense, you know, some private academies, clubs, their academies. So you have a lot of sort of system in place. And I think it increased the number of competitive matches that our youth players were playing week in, week out. So I think that's the main facet of, you know, what's really been launched. But you look beyond that in terms of infrastructure. I think the Kallang Football Hub has been a major boost to the Singapore football ecosystem. So you look at the numbers, and I think I've written about this earlier or rather last year, where, you know, we talked about the various changes, the various ideas that have come in place because of Unleash the Raw. They wanted to rebuild Singapore football. So to rebuild something, you got to tear down things that were in place and put in new initiatives which have been put in place in the last few years.
That's why you're a recurring guest on this show, because you provided excellent context into everything that's been laid out. One word you perhaps omitted was professionalism, and I feel everything that you mentioned has added that layer of professionalism, which is not a word we often use when it comes to Singapore football. Sasi, I'd like to bring you in here. From the outside looking in, what key areas do you feel that have not been addressed by the Unleash the Raw project?
I believe that there's one thing that has not been talked about a lot more is the club infrastructure and also coaching development, even though I think they have started sending coaches abroad and stuff like that. We did a bit of talent identification, but I don't know at what level that went into. But I would say that you can't build a skyscraper without a solid foundation. So we still seem to be struggling at the club level, where maybe one or two clubs got their act together. The rest are still struggling. So in my opinion, regardless of what we do on the grassroots level, there must be a pathway for these players to end up somewhere. So that means that the clubs need to have the infrastructure, need to have the pathway to then take these talented players who are going to come through this system. So to me, that's not been addressed yet. And I'm not sure what's happening with privatization of the league, which was talked about quite a bit. I suppose that's the gap here.
I think Sasi is spot on here to talk about the Singapore Premier League, because I think over the last couple of years, I think the sort of key decision makers have been confused as to what the purpose of the league is. I think early on you saw our FAS president, not for so long, Bernard Tan, talking about how it's a developmental league, about how, you need to sort of blood in the players here and then the real best players will be playing overseas. But right now, I think the sort of the common thinking is they want the Singapore Premier League to be elite. So I think there's just a mixed mash of ideas. And like Sasi said, there was talk that it was going to be privatized. It hasn't quite taken place yet. But we need a strong league because that's where the players will play ultimately. You can have all the youth ideas in the world, but where do they end up playing? That's important.
On the topic of elite, someone who's been there, done that, none other than Singapore's very own Kadir Yahaya. Kadir, in your opinion, how should success be measured? And now that you've got stuck into the UTR project, right? What's your honest internal review of the situation?
Let me give you a summary of Singapore football, how we started this program and everything. If you can recall, we started off with the Milo scheme. That's where you find Fandi and Sundram started. Okay? Then we go one more step. There's another blueprint. They call it Sports Excellence 2000. It was Specs 2000. It was by former Minister Abdullah Tarmuji. That's why Rafi and Nazri, went to Czechoslovakia, came back, and then they blooded into the national team. After that, 1998, when I crossed the ball, Sasi used his shoulder blade to score. So we become more ambitious, That time was our former minister, Mabautan. Make it more ambitious to go one step further. That's why Goal 2010 came about. After Goal 2010, after that we surpass. So we have so many success stories. Where 2012 we win the Suzuki Cup, and then we win the subsequent Suzuki Cup. And then we go to Asia Top 10. These are the blueprint that we have. Let's go for this direction. Then after that we get a strategic plan. There was Zainuddin and president, and then we go to the strategic plan, and then where we can improve our youth system, our league, and overall football. And then finally, we come to this Goal 2034 project. If you can answer me, for all these decades we have been through, is there any successful model we can follow now? Where do we go from here? So 2024 is a project, is a blueprint that not only for professional league or football and everything, it encompasses everything from mass participation, from elite to the clubs, and also from there we can start to grow our league. So we must define our GPS. It's very important. Okay, so 2034 is not a short-term project like what we had before. It's a long-term project, and then it can be take to 10 to 15 years where we can see all the success that we're gonna reap the rewards in the success in 10 to 15 years time. Of course, as a Singaporean, they want to fix. Okay, what's the short-term? What's the long-term? What's the mid-term? But along the way, we have to find success along the way to build our team, build our success. Okay, make sure we have a very good youth development. Okay, from there we can compete in the AFF, AFC, and eventually the boys can progress into national team. That is the main target for us.
So Kadir, if I can just ask you a follow-up to that, you talked about 2034 being an aspirational target. For context and for the purpose of our listeners, what are some medium targets that have been set but perhaps not publicly admitted to yet?
First of all, if you want to start this project, you have to aim at AFC under 17. This is our project first, in the short term within 5 years. Especially the clubs and also the UTR and then all this NDC. We have to have one conversation where all the coaches, all the stakeholders to discuss how you're going to go about. Make sure that they have a school football, they have a youth league, and they also participate in the club. Currently now, the club need more help in getting the players good shape and then to have a proper training program, proper coaches, proper facilities to train everything. So it's all the fundamental we need to fix first before we think of everything else. So the best thing is that now with the UTR, if you can see the number of players, the number of students from 3 to 5 years old or under 8, under 10, the number is increasing rapidly. Now we are running off of coaches. We need to find some venues for them because the participation, the mass participation now getting bigger. And then with the introduction of a Singapore Youth League, there's about 300 teams are now participating. And we have Division 1, Division 2. People can say, there's no quality. But you can see that it shows that Singaporean, the kids, they need a platform. They have a dream. They just want to go there and play. So the numbers are growing. The demands are growing. Now the more teams are coming in. And it shows that there's a lot of interest, especially the kids at this young age to play in our league.
Thank you so much for the context, Kadir. And Sasi, I want to bring you in here. Not for the first time, Kadir has set it up quite nicely for you. I want to take your opinion on this in terms of someone who's been to Europe to see various different infrastructures. Based on everything Kadir said, do you think that's a model that we are working towards?
No, certainly. I think, at the start of the conversation, Kadir talked about does a model fit us? As any model work for us? I think we need to adapt to what is suitable for Singapore. Many people have come in the past and they've implemented one style of play or one style of system that never worked let's not forget our tourism logo is uniquely Singapore. So we are very uniquely Singapore in many, many ways, right? So football is no different. Having spent the last 3 years here and watching over 100 plus games, youth games a season with my boys and the other boys, football system works very differently. And we need to start looking at footballers as a wholesome human being rather than just the talent side of it. And I'm seeing this every day. So whatever we are doing in Singapore at the moment, what we are doing is that we are just basically building the blocks in giving the kids an opportunity to start playing. Now, when we take the elite players out, how do we then mold them into becoming real elite players? There are a lot of elite players there by name, but are we really creating elite players? Because the real elite players is when they come here and they compete, whether it's mentally, physically, technically, that's something that I think we need to kind of quickly bridge. And I'm glad that, Kadir, who's leading the project, saying that the first kind of milestone is the 17s, because I think if you go past the 17s, we have already missed the opportunity. Even 15, we missed the opportunity. So I'm glad that there will be a domino effect coming further down. So my point of view is that while we are doing all this infrastructure, we're getting all these opportunities, we cannot forget the human side of the players, because if we want to create top-class athletes, it's got to start young. We've got to give that elite kind of attitude, mentality. Some people don't like it, but my point is that if you don't know how to win from a young age, then forget about playing at the top level, because Kadir will tell you that us growing up, the competition was crazy and you had to have an elite mind to get to the top. I hope that is incorporated in this entire UTR system, but I think we are heading in the right direction, but I think we need to tweak some things along the way.
As two former pros, I think you and Kadir have set the scene in terms of what you know of what works and what doesn't work. I need to talk about the administrative side of things though, and that's where I have to bring up one major frustration, which has been the lack of clarity in who's responsible for what. Is it the FAS? Is it Sport SG, MOE, UTR, or are the clubs accountable? Deepan, perhaps you can set the scene for me and tell me, is that something you face in your line of work when you're chasing stories, chasing quotes, in terms of not knowing who to address your questions to?
I think it may have been a confusion at the start of the announcement in 2021, 2022. But if you ask me right now, I think it's quite clear who to reach when it comes to matters pertaining Singapore football. Of course, when it comes to club matters and things related to the Singapore Premier League, of course, you reach out to the Football Association of Singapore. And of course, with the Unleashed Raw, they have a dedicated comms team now that you can reach out to. But just to sort of go further into the topic, I think for Singapore football, because of how small we are, I think you cannot just sit back and say, hey, UTR is responsible for the development of Singapore football henceforth. I think it takes a lot of hands to come together. So UTR is, of course, responsible for one aspect of Singapore football, but everyone else has to sort of put their helping hand in. So when it comes to the FAS, in terms of the competitions, the clubs, in terms of empowering clubs to do better, clubs themselves have to step up in terms of how they take care of their academies. What kind of impetus are you giving your young players to step up to the pro team later on in your career? So all these things play a part, even to the extent of Active SG, because they also have their academy operations. What are they doing to feed into the end result that is Singapore football? So to answer your question, I think it's not just a case of one hand. It needs to be all these helping hands. And I think it's becoming more clear who is in charge of what. My hope is that they make it even more clear to the general public to say, okay, UTR is in charge of this, and then we have the national team, which is under the purview of so and so. So I hope that clarity is provided in time to come.
Yeah, I think in terms of boxes that need to be ticked, professionalism is one of them, but communication is another one. And just to play devil's advocate, I understand the ecosystem in Singapore, but I'd like to bring Sasi in for this part of the conversation. Could it possibly be a case of too many cooks in the kitchen?
My opinion is this: everybody has an opinion about football, right or wrong. Now, that's never going to change. But then again, there are practitioners and there are fanboys, right? People who are fans of the game and people who are actual practitioners. So we need to separate those two. There are a lot of who are in the game that see it from a fan perspective, and then they are real practitioners. Now, I'm glad they've got someone like Kadir there, who's a real practitioner, who's been a practitioner for many, many years. So this is what we need: more football people, more practitioners making policy decisions. Once you have that kind of stuff, then we can head in the right direction, right or wrong. But they know that this is based on data, this is based on experience, not because somebody read a book or somebody spoke to a friend or some real star and stuff like that. So it's people who have dedicated their life to working in the business day in, day out. The thing they think about is they get up, they think about coaching, or they think about marketing, they talk about commercial. These are the kind of people we need to get in. So I really hope, even with the new administration that's going to come in there, the right people are the right job, because it's very easy to forget money cannot solve everything. Yeah, money can get you somewhere, but you need people, you need the software. If we create only the hardware and not with the software, we're going to have a problem again. So I really hope that the right people are there and the right people are put in different positions to make policy, because let's not forget, if you make a decision today, that's going to impact us 5 years, 7 years, 10 years down the line. And we can't have people who decide on the whims and fancies today that, oh, today we don't feel like this. Not having this view that everything needs to be 5, 10, 15 years, because football is a process. If we can have success tomorrow, everybody will be doing it. It's a process. We need to make decisions, but let those decisions be made by football people who have years and years of experience and data behind them to make those decisions.
No, I love that, Sasi, in terms of putting the right people in the right places. I think everyone on this call will agree that Kadir Yahaya is one of them, right person in the right position. So Kadir, speak to me as the director of football. In terms of what you're working with now, do you still think there's a lot of red tape that you're facing in terms of the ideas that you're trying to push?
Of course, we are in a Singapore context. Okay, we have to look at the reality is that the boys have to go to school and they have school games to play. Sometimes they have school training. And then after that, they got to juggle with the NDC training and then also some clubs training. And then over the weekend, they have Singapore Youth League. Like what you said correctly just now is really struck me it's about communication. Okay, if all these stakeholders we can communicate, okay, how we can run the league maybe in a year, how can we stagger the league, how we should not be running parallel, where players have to play 2 games for the school game and then over the weekend they have the Singapore Youth League. How we can work together, for the interest of Singapore football, for the interest of the parents, for the school, and also especially the welfare of the boys. They can't be playing 2 on the school game and on the weekend they play. We have to look about the injuries and the exams and everything. So the context of Singapore is very important. It's unique and something different from any other country. So when we talk the development, we must be holistic. We cannot just about football. Yes, we want to develop the football. Elite, yes, we want it to go to elite. At the same time, we must look at the holistic development. He must have time for school, he must have for the parents, for the peers, and also his football development. And we have to take all this into account. When you have a foreign coach who comes to Singapore, sometimes they have culture shock. Some of the coaches I have, they say culture. Why? It's different from England. Of course, I say it's different. But I told them to lower your expectation. This is Singapore. We are unique. Of course, land is scarce. We don't have that much facilities for other clubs to do. But we try to make do. We try to have maybe all the stakeholders, can we sit down and talk? Can we have some line of communication where when during the NSG as well as to stop, and during this one, when NSG about to finish, then as well as stop. And it's a win-win situation. The key point, what you said just now, is about communication. And for the good of Singapore football, if everybody can sit down, and then it's just discussion, and we can find a common ground.
Kadir, thank you for, in terms of identifying the problem, addressing that communication is an issue. As someone representing the listeners in this conversation, I feel they're straight away going to think, how hard can communication be? It's just a matter of, in this day and age, in terms of technology, a shared calendar, a WhatsApp group. So what is it that is stopping that communication?
For me, when I came back, it's a culture shock. There's a lot of emails coming in, and there's a lot of threats, ding, 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 ding. I mean, if you in Thailand, I agree. If you're in Thailand, to go to the FA for my place to go to the FA is about an hour, something. Traffic is bad, 2 hours. From National Stadium to Jalan Besar, it can be 15 minutes, 20 minutes. We have lost the human touch. It's about the email and WhatsApp. Why don't we meet? I already told my staff, if anything we need to talk, just meet and talk, or call over the phone, or quick message. Stop all this email thing. I'm not a fan of email. It's about a human touch and conversation. So all things can be solved if we communicate, we sit down and talk and find a common ground, what we can do, what we can help. Everything can be solved. So the key point is about communication.
Sasi, if I can come to you as an entrepreneur and a successful business owner, in terms of communication, do you agree with what Kadir said?
Yeah, I think there's a time and place for emails, then there's time and place for face-to-face meetings. I mean, my philosophy has always been to see the person face-to-face, and that's the reason why I'm always on the road. And when I need to do a meeting, I jump on the plane, I go and see people, because there's nothing more personal and nothing more committal than seeing somebody face-to-face. Then you know the person, whether they are genuine or not, or they can also see that whether you are committed to the cause as well, because sometimes, like you said, the emails, messages always get misrepresented. Exclamation mark can mean that somebody's upset. So, and not everybody is a fantastic writer with email, even though we have artificial intelligence to write our emails today. But I'm a huge fan of meeting face-to-face. And I agree. I think the likes of Sports SG, the FAS, MOE, whoever it is, even when we were, when I was part of the Exco for UTR, when we met, the energy was different. When we met, the conversations were different. So I think that this is something that we need to revert back to. Now with the convenience of emails and Zoom meetings and all that stuff, people are losing a bit of the touch. But in football, we are dealing with human beings, which means human beings need to sit across the table and sort the differences, plan together, collaborate. I think that's what he's coming at. I believe so.
So Sasi, whenever you're back in Singapore, save me a date so we can meet face to face, okay?
Anytime for you.
Gentlemen, we need to talk about the future. But before that, I would like to address the elephant in the room, and that's the lightning rod that is Goal 2034. Public criticism of the Goal 2034 has been intense, to say the least, with many questioning its realism, calling it a PR stunt, or some suggesting the timeline is completely detached from the reality, some of the realities which we've laid out, right? Sasi, coming back to you on this, as someone who has marketing experience, would you have signed on an ad campaign that read Goal 2034 is the ambition?
Absolutely. Why not? Because the question is, when did Singaporeans become so pessimistic? If we were not optimistic about the future, we would not be sitting here, you and I, all of us educated in English, travel around the world. That was because our forefathers, the leaders before, they had a vision of the country. And as an entrepreneur, I'll be hypocritical if I say that I never set lofty goals. Gentlemen, I'm from Yishun. I'm sitting here in Madrid and talking to you. My boys play for one of the top academies in the world. If I did not set lofty goals for myself, I will never be here. So I must say that, to his credit, Minister Edwin Tong came out there, put his neck on the line when many will not do this. It's almost like a career suicide to do this. But if we don't have the lofty goals, let's just imagine for just argument's sake, the goal was to win SEA Games 2029. And everybody will be laughing. He said, oh, that's the ambition. Like Kadir rightfully pointed out the milestones earlier. I believe that, if you aim for the stars, maybe you're going to fall a little bit short, but that's good enough for a tiny nation like us. The football has been in the doldrums for many, many years. My question is, imagine there wasn't a Goal 2034 or the Unleash the Raw. Can you imagine the state of football in Singapore today? To a lot of people, they don't understand that we were seriously in the doldrums, and this project basically gave us the energy to move to the next level. So, in my opinion, I think that there's going to be a lot of benefits. People don't see it now. Like I said, it is a process. Let's wait. Let's wait for 5, 6, 7, 10 years. We'll have in this conversation, hopefully, on a podcast, on a radio show, saying that, remember we had this conversation? That's why we are here now.
And hopefully that conversation will be in person, right? Kadir, if I can bring you in for this part, as someone who's involved in the inner workings of UTR, when we talk about Goal 2034, right, is that something that's repeatedly mentioned as a mantra, or are we working towards those smaller steps that will then add credibility to Goal 2034?
If you recall Goal 2010, we had this Goal 2010. It was 1998 when we win the Tiger Cup. Let's move another level. But everybody can see the failure. Correct? You agree? Everybody say, oh, it's a failure. Why you make this statement and everything. But there is a ripple effect on Singapore football. For example, after that, who started the professional league in ASEAN? 1996, we started a professional league in Singapore, right? Who started the foreign talent first? We started to have Ekma, Mirko, Chiayi, Abu. Who started this? In Singapore. Now, which country is having the most foreign talent in the national team? You see, we are the trend setting. And 2012, we start winning the Suzuki Cup. And then consequently, we have about 4. So after that, the problem is that where do we go from here? I've met Minister Edwin Tong. We have a very long conversation, very candid, very open. Why we do this, why we need to do, why are we setting like this, the goal. We used to be, for your information and to all the listeners, in 1993, Singapore ranking was 75th. You can Google now. But 2018, we are 160. Why are we going down? And without even any intervention, without any conversation, why we should be in this situation right now? Can you imagine on 1993, the euphoria of Singapore football? Now we dropped so much, even double, and nobody take any action or intervention. So now we have to start from ground zero. So the only way to start is with the Minister Edwin commitment to start this Goal 2034 with the injection of software and hardware. What is software? That means we have full-time coaches. So many full-time coaches now, even at school level. Even at a primary school, even at our secondary school, even our academy now, the national academy, we have full-time coaches now, dedicated full-time. We have foreign coaches to bring in the expertise, to come here and to give us the knowledge and also to share the experience. And now we have players, our NDC now going to Europe, going to Spain, they're going to UK, they're going to overseas now to compete, to play. And this is one of the projects that we are going to start again. So now is the new beginning for all of us, especially for the kids, for all children. There is a pathway for you. If you play well, identify the talent, very clear that there's a pathway for you. You will go to our junior NDC, and then you go to NDC, where NDC there's more intense training, and there'll be overseas trip and even scholarship for them, for local scholarship and overseas scholarship.
Kadir, I can confirm that Google confirms your points about the world rankings.
You can. Sasi kan apa-apa. Only 1998. When I crossed the border, before that we have a fight. Sasi, remember? Before the game, Sasi, we have a huge fight. I remember we have a fight in dressing room or what?
No, outside. But you see, that's the thing. Both of us wanted to win, right? Both of us wanted.
Yeah. We almost fight.
Gentlemen, I have to zoom in. I have to zoom in on this fight, not for the details of it, but as two gentlemen who clearly wanted it so much back then, and even now you want it so much, right? Do you think it's that sense of wanting or fighting for something you want that is missing amongst Singaporeans?
Maybe I can chime in on this, right? I mean, Kadir was a senior player and I was a younger player, and that was the first tournament that I started as a first team. But the mentality is the same. Doesn't matter if he's young or old. We wanted to win. We know that we had one hand on the trophy and everybody wanted to win. Okay, I made a mistake and it was so tense. I mean, Kadir will say it was so intense, and you are under pressure cooker. So things get out of hand. But ironically, he's the one who crossed the ball for me to score. So I suppose the script was well written. Yeah.
And I guess everything was forgotten and the rest is history, right? Deepan, I need to bring you into this conversation. We've mentioned Minister Edwin Tong a couple of times already. In terms of overlaps, you all have plenty. You all love Singapore football. You all love Manchester United as much as well. And Manchester United, I bring it up with good reason, because even they have set the lofty target of winning the Premier League title in 2028. Me and you know that's a very aspirational target. So when someone like Manchester United are setting targets, what's wrong with Singapore football setting a goal 2034 target?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think on the ground, there are a lot of fans who are sort of pessimistic about this goal. And I've always wondered, if you don't set a lofty goal, how then do you get out of your comfort zone? Because let's be honest, if let's say, I think Sasi mentioned this, if let's say the goal was to sort of win the SEA Games goal, how do you justify the kind of money and the kind of projections that you're making in terms of all these plans that you're putting in place? You're not going to sort of sell the project to anybody. You're not going to an overseas academy to say, hey, can you help us? We want to win the SEA Games goal. They will look at you and say, SEA Games goal, are you serious? No, you know what? I'm not getting involved in this project. But when you go to people and you sell them the dream, 2034, it already energizes you, and I think that's what is important here. And to take a step back, you talk about 2034 and Unleash the Raw and all that. People forget the kind of jobs, the kind of industry that it's creating in Singapore at the moment. I mean, you don't just talk about Unleash the Raw. The coaches, they are getting jobs now with the SFA. The kind of academies who are involved in SYL, who now have to hire more coaches to sort of look after the teams. This is benefiting Singapore at the end of the day. You take away from Singapore football, okay, but Singaporeans are getting jobs. Singaporeans are investing into this project. So it's something to be passionate about. And you brought in Manchester United as well. As a fan, of course, we suffer watching the team these days. But when someone tells you, okay, you know what, we are going to win the Premier League in 3 years, and then slowly you start to look at, okay, how now can we work towards the goal? And primary for that was, okay, they felt they need a new stadium. They felt they need to sort of re-energize the whole infrastructure there. So that's how the stadium plan came about. So same thing for Singapore football. If you don't sell a dream, if you don't put a lofty goal, how then do you justify all these plans that are in place? And to me, I think how it best sums up is you ask Haris Harun, one of the most decorated footballers in Singapore in recent history. If he is saying, I wish I was 10 years younger so that I can benefit from all these projects and things that are put in place, I think it tells you everything that you need to know. Because someone like Haris, he of course, he worked hard to get to where he is today. But if he was given the opportunities that our youth players are getting now in terms of overseas scholarships, overseas training, can you imagine the kind of player that he could have become as well? So I'm sure Kadir and Sasi are also looking at all these plans being put in place and thinking, you know what, I wish there was a time machine, I can go back 20 years and these plans were in place. Because it's marvellous, right? And I for long have been a critic of Singapore football. Don't get me wrong, I still am. But when I look at these plans that are put in place, it energizes me to perhaps stay in my job for another 10 years to hopefully report on the breakthroughs that some of these young kids are making in Singapore football. It energizes me, and I say that solemnly because to me, I think that now more than ever, there's something to look forward to. Whether or not it fails in the years to come, to me, there is something to look forward to, something to sort of follow closely, and hopefully we do reach somewhere near the goal. Even if we don't qualify for World Cup, like Sasi and Kadir mentioned earlier, we might get something else, whether that's AFC Under-17 qualification, doing well or better at the SEA Games. We are so low now, and they mentioned rankings and whatnot, right? It's not a case of that we have gone down. It's a case of us being stagnant. Everybody else around us has improved, but now with this project in place, it's our time to start climbing the stairs.
Couple of things there. Firstly, I think we can all agree that we want to be 10 years younger, regardless of UTR or not. I think everyone on the call will agree to that. I have a follow-up that I would like to get your opinion on, Deepan. We've touched on goal 2010 and how that was a failure in terms of what we set out to achieve, right? Do you think there's some level of PTSD that is then being baggage on this goal 2034? And also, has the times changed such that there's social media now and therefore the noise is louder, therefore everything is being scrutinized?
I think football was in a very different place in the 2010s to what it is now. Football has become so much more commercialized, and you mentioned as well, social media and all that noise has also started to grow in recent years. But I think it's not so much a PTSD, but more a case of what can you learn from previous failures. I think that's what is more important for us to look at. And I think just because you failed once, twice, thrice, does not mean you stand up again and try to sort of set the lofty goals again. And I think that's what is important. I know, at the end of the day, every fan wants Singapore football to improve, and they're going to say, oh, how is this different from what it was back then? That's the key question that people will ask. But I think it's fundamentally different in terms of the kind of plans, the different plans being put in place, the scholarships that are available, the SYL that's being put in place. It's markedly different from what was done before. And I think what we need to do as Singapore football observers, Singapore football critics, is to channel their feedback accordingly. Don't just make noise on social media for the sake of it, but approach the people. We talk about communication earlier on. Approach the people in place. Sort of tell them what your feedback is, and then we move forward together.
I think that's a point Sasi had touched on earlier as well in terms of the noise and keyboard warrior culture. Sasi, if I can come to you, what do you think our biggest learning points from the failure of 2010 was?
So again, if we label it as failure, then there's no way we are moving forward, right? So we got to say, what are the learnings? I think then the narrative changes. So I think our learnings are, there are many learnings from there. Actually, to be honest, I would say that there are a lot more learnings than actual failures per se, because I was the beneficiary of 2010. That was like Kadir said, when the league started, the professional league, S-League started, we were paid really well for that period in time. So that we were all beneficiaries of that. So the learnings, I would say, there are a lot of things to take, and we can take 3 days to talk about this. But I want to touch something that's very, 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 very key and very, very important. We don't know what's a good thing until we lose it. So now that the top or the government, it's a government initiative, a lot of money is going through it, we need to be careful on how to preserve this. Because if we don't, and if there's a lot of noise, if there's a lot of backlash, the easiest thing to do is let's take it away, right? Because that will be the easy thing to do. And my point to all the people that are keyboard warriors, if you're really building something worthwhile, you will not have the time to go online and talk about other people, right? Because you're busy building. And some of the times, I think a lot of them just say it for the sake of saying. It's just because they don't even, maybe they are even football fans. They're just frustrated football fans, like every football fan in the world, right? So I believe that I think what we need to do is to take those learnings, whether if it's from an infrastructure perspective, from youth development perspective, or the league perspective, then bring it on. We can see, I think it's not really rocket science, and a lot of it, Kadir pointed out, you guys pointed out as well. It's not that we don't know what is the problem. First, we need to recognize it, and we need to fix it. So step by step, it cannot be built in one day. You cannot build Rome in one day. It's a process. Fans don't like process. Fans don't like, it's like a movie. You got to keep the movie going. You cannot stop the movie halfway and say, let me tell you the finishing. Nobody wants to know that. They will just want to watch the movie. So movie means everything has to be aesthetics. Everything has to be visual. So I think from a communication perspective, if we then also say and communicate what are the wins, because people want wins. Wins like what our players are doing, what we are doing. So if all of that communication can come forward, I think we will not lessen the noise a lot more, and I think we'll garner a lot more, just not fan support, maybe even corporate support behind this project. Yesterday, I was watching the scholars here. The players who came in September are completely different what they are now when we are in April. completely different. It's a completely different players, and the mindset has changed and stuff like that. In a very short period, like 6 months, these players have completely changed. So, like I said again, and I'll keep saying this again, is that when we change the environment, things get better for them, right? And they're here competing. So the future looks really good. And to one of the Thai friends we met here 2 weeks ago, and he says, "Wow, Singapore is doing a lot." I said, "Speak to us again in 5 to 7 years, because we'll be a completely different country when it comes to football."
Kadir, if I can bring you in here, you've already given us a lot of insight into the inner workings of UTR, right? But in terms of your time as director of football, you must have had one-on-one conversations with Minister Edwin Tong as well. What's one thing that stands out for you from your interactions with him?
Yes, we had a long conversation when I met him. The thing that struck me is that there's a lot of investment, especially the KFH. And also what struck me was that there's a pathway even for ex-national player to be part of UTR. So that's why I can see now Stephen Tan, Rafi Ali, all the ex-national players now getting involved in the youth development. Usually in the FAS, they have a limited chances to go into FAS because there's not much scope for them. But in UTR, we have a huge platform for all ex-national players where they still can contribute, instead of going behind the scene and they're talking about negativity about Singapore football, or they're not given a chance, why I'm not given a chance. So every player have a part to play. This struck me well because I've seen a lot of my former national players who have some of them doing well, some of them not doing well. So this is a platform for some of ex-national players. After they contributed, they have spent many, many years sacrificing for training, football, competition. So at least when they retire, they can still have some, they can still contribute in a small way or in any capacity.
I think it's important when we try and criticize certain targets, we realize the untangible impact, the positive impact that goals like this have. Deepan, as the youngest person in this conversation, I want to know your opinion as a fan. Put your journalist hat off. Do you share the optimism shared by Kadir and Sasi in terms of the framework being there for us to go out and achieve positive things in the years ahead?
Yeah, so let's not talk about football, we talk about sports. I've been a Singapore sports fan for the longest time. I think the enthusiasm, the energy now in Singapore sports, and most importantly, the commitment to professionalism in Singapore sports now is more than ever. You look at the kind of commitment the parents are showing to the sport, and we have an example here in Sasi, for him to sort of go over to another country to sort of invest in the dream that his sons have. So I think a lot has changed in terms of the narrative, the perspective. And you look at the kind of schemes, the initiatives that the ministry is putting into sports. I can only dream of better things to come. And I think it's come at a time where a lot of individual athletes as well are investing more into their dreams. I mean, you've seen what Shanti has done in athletics. You see a lot of other athletes investing in their dream and knowing that, okay, I can reach a certain target with the help of the available schemes and grants that can sort of better my training. So I think then you bring Singapore football into the picture and you say, hey, if all these individual athletes are getting this kind of a leg up, then Singapore football is also getting a leg up. Of course, it's not at the level where, we want to sort of compare to neighboring countries. You look at what Indonesia is doing. But I think at this point in time, you compare to what's been done in the last few years, something is being done, more is being done. So you feel energized by it. And all this comes because there are passionate people at work who feel that things need to be changed for Singapore sports. I draw you into a very specific example now. A couple of years ago, I had this conversation with an athlete who was telling me that, he perhaps might want to step away from sports because it's time to focus on family, he said, because I'm going to get married, bro. I need CPF, I need to find a proper job. Right now in sports, if you're good enough, you have CPF coming into you in terms of the new scheme that was launched not so long ago. So people in power, they are looking at these things, and right now to pursue sport as a full-time career is not as crazy as it was 10-15 years ago. If you go to your parent and said, hey, you know what, I'm going to be a full-time sports athlete, you might get a slap or two. but right now I think parents can see that, okay, you know what, there are schemes and things available for you to pursue that, and I feel energized by it. As a sports fan, I hope that this will be the future in time to come, where where sports is a viable career in Singapore.
No, I love that because you set the context speaking to the Singaporeans. They love CPF, they love frameworks, and they love to see tangible progress, which is what we all want in this conversation. I started this conversation feeling a bit negative, but I'm trying to end it feeling very much positive. I just have a final question in terms of, Kadir, does good communication start with hard questions? And do you sometimes feel like you're asking the right questions, but people just hate my guts for asking the right questions?
When I decided to join UTR, my friends were telling me, messaging me, hey, why you joined Under the Roof? Why you join Under the Road? Why you join Ulu Tidam Rangers? All these UTR names, they were making funny of it. So I told them, hey, this is where I started. I think there is talent. I don't believe that there's no talent. There is talent here. Let me look at all the processes and to improve. Let's give it a try. From 2021 until now, you're just 4 years old. What do you expect a project of 4 years old to be? It's just we are 4 years old. So I told everybody, we're just 4 years old. We are not like any other countries. They have developed for 20 years old and 20 years of this program. We're just 4 years old.
Absolutely. Well, I'm certain all of you on this call will expect a few calls after this, hopefully to talk about what is being done for the UTR and how steps are being taken to achieve a goal 2034. It's easy to criticize, but harder to build. And today's conversation shows that while Singapore football is far from perfect, there are still good people fighting the good fight. And with more honesty, accountability and belief, Singapore football might just find its roar once again. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sports Minutes on Money FM 89.3.